back to Christ Presbyterian Church's Advent Devotionals. I am Pastor Lynn, and I have been narrating this series. Midweek through the first week of Advent, we read about Jacob, Joseph, and David. Although separated from Jesus by 1,000 years or two, these important, very human figures helped to shape the people of God. Genesis 32, verses 26 through 28. Then the man said, "Let me go, for the day is breaking." But Jacob said, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." So he said to him, "What is your name?" And he said, "Jacob." Then the man said, "You shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel, for you have striven with God and with humans and have prevailed." Jacob spent a whole night wrestling with a man who appeared after he had sent his whole household ahead of him, while on his way back home after a long absence. He had been wrestling with his anxiety over how his brother Esau would receive him when he arrived, since they had parted in a cloud of deceit and anger. Jacob received a new name, reflecting new strength of character. God also gives us new strength of character. When we struggle with our own anxieties, God sees and accompanies us, forming us into faithful disciples through our troubles. Genesis 45, verses 4 to 5. Then Joseph said to his brothers, "Come closer to me." And they came closer. He said, "I am your brother Joseph, whom you sold into Egypt. And now do not be distressed or angry with yourselves because you sold me here. For God sent me before you to preserve life." We all know the story of Joseph, how his brothers sold him into slavery in Egypt due to the favoritism of his father, and how he ended up being second in command under Pharaoh when he interpreted Pharaoh's dreams. Despite the hardships of his brother's betrayal and all the many trials he experienced in Egypt, Joseph learned to see God's hand in what happened, recognizing God's good purpose that ultimately saved lives. So we too, when trudging through the hardships of life, can choose to look at what God is doing around and through us, trusting that God's purpose is ultimately good. 1 Samuel 16, verses 10 to 13. Jesse made 7 of his sons pass before Samuel, and Samuel said to Jesse, "Are all your sons here?" And he said, "There remains yet the youngest, but he is keeping the sheep." And Samuel said to Jesse, "Send and bring him, for we will not sit down until he comes here." He sent and brought him in. The Lord said, "Rise and anoint him, for this is the one." Then Samuel took the horn of oil and anointed him in the presence of his brothers, and the Spirit of the Lord came mightily upon David from that day forward. David was the youngest of 8 brothers. In a culture that valued the firstborn above all the rest of the children, the youngest being chosen for such an important position as king was unheard of. Even so today, we may fail to see our own value and worth in the way God chooses and calls us. Knowing that Jesus, the Christ, is descended from the smallest of the small, helps us to renew our faith and see that God can use even us. Peace be with you.